Anyway, let's talk about the Barbie movie. I watched the Barbie movie. You haven't seen it, have you?
I haven't. I mentioned to you beforehand, but I'll mention this so people understand where I'm coming from, because I might be a bit quiet in this, which is that me and Daisy were actually really hyped for the Barbie movie, and we were talking about it beforehand, and then it came out and it became everyone's pet political thing, and I've still missed it, so I've been trying to ignore it.
Honestly, you should go and watch it. It's actually quite good.
I've been trying to ignore it to not get spoilers.
Right, okay, well,
it's a bit late for that now.
Yeah, it's a bit late for that. But the thing is, if it helps, it's actually a really complicated film that has many different layers, and no one really seems to understand it. So don't worry about the spoilers, because people seem to just be getting it wrong, which is weird. But yes, I will be doing like a 3-hour breakdown of the Barbie movie at some point. I'm actually going on holiday next week, so it's going to be in a couple.
To write it.
No.
I interrupt this segment to bring you an important message about this stuff, the dollar. Not going so well, is it? Inflation is out of control and debt is even more out of control. In fact, the US government is on the verge of spending $1 trillion a year just servicing its debt. It spends about $6.6 trillion and it only collects about $4.6 trillion in revenues. So you can see that this situation is, rapidly taking a turn for the worse. You might want to consider some gold and silver, and that is why that we've done a partnership deal with Goldco, and we've created LotusEatersGold.com. Go and check that out. It's an offer for our American viewers. You can transfer a proportion of your IRA into this, and if you do so, you're going to get some of this lovely stuff, some bonus silver thrown in on top, up to $10,000. Or you can even take delivery of the physical gold to your home address if you prefer. So if you want money that goes clang when you put it down, check out LotusEatersGold.com.
That's a writer, yeah. Going to an alpine retreat to
wear full pink and sit there with a typewriter.
To spend a week alone to create this masterpiece. No, but there's a lot to it, actually. And just, it's really weird, people's responses. But before we go on, if you want to support us, go over to LotusEaters.com and watch this difficult conversation about sexuality and gender that I had for Tanza. And this is actually very germane to this, because much of the Barbie movie revolves around the lack of male-female relationships in the concept of Barbie. And this is something that Philip actually has done a good job of bringing out there's a kind of layer of obfuscation that we have when talking about, say, the LGBT community. And once you actually properly understand where he's coming from, because he's been in both worlds, actually he makes some really good points that I hadn't considered, because I've always been a really boring straight man. And so I didn't really think about the things that he said, because he's an ex-gay porn actor, right? And so he's like, look, there's a lot to understand. I'm not going to go into it now, because obviously that's what that's for. But anyway, right. So let's talk about Ben Shapiro destroying the Barbie movie for 3 minutes.
This meme has been shared a lot.
Yeah. I mean, this. I can't.
I'm going to click on it.
Yeah. Just scroll down. You don't have to watch it. So yeah, 2.5 million views in 2 weeks, which is great. But the thing is, as you can see, it's 60,000 downvotes on that, and only 85 up.
So is that leftists being like, shut up? Or is it right wingers being like, I have a new interpretation?
Probably left wingers.
Okay.
But the thing is, Ben Shapiro took this the entire wrong way and failed, in my opinion, to properly understand what was being said in the Barbie movie. It's not actually just a feminist film. It's actually really reactionary, which I'm not going to even explain. It just really is. Matt Walsh also wrote an article about this that apparently is not
the article.
No, but this for some reason is not included on this list. But Barbie,
Matt Walsh just keeps getting better and better.
Barbie delivers feminism with a man-hating sledgehammer. It's like that, but Barbie doesn't hate men. The film itself doesn't hate men, and is actually really sympathetic. And this actually is a problem that feminists are grappling with now. It's like, hang on a second, why is everyone talking about Ken in the Barbie movie? Literally everyone's talking about Ken. Nobody is talking about Barbie, which is actually a shame, because there's actually an interesting character arc for Barbie and for women to understand and take away from Barbie. However, Ken is the interesting thing about the Barbie movie. I mean, I had never watched a film with Ryan Gosling in it before, so I had no idea what he was like as an actor, but he was actually really good, really entertaining, and very charming to watch. Like he portrays the character in a very sympathetic way, but he's also like he's the best thing when he's on the screen. His Ken is the thing that you want to watch. And one of the things about the movie is like, well, can I get more of this? Because I want more Ken discovering patriarchy, which honestly it's a great line. It's a great like angle to have on it. Ken discovers patriarchy. He's like, hey, this is brilliant. It's like, yeah, it is. Let's have more of that. Let's have more young men discovering the brilliance of patriarchy, please. Barbie movie. And then let's have Barbie choosing patriarchy at the end, shall we? Barbie movie, which does happen. Again, no one seems to understand this movie. I'm going to talk about it in great depth. But anyway, Matt Walsh goes on and has a very poor take on it. And this is surprising, right? Because I just want to be clear. I really like Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh. I really like the guys at Daily Wire.
We've gone over a load of their stuff because it's great.
We're fans of these people. And I'm surprised they had this kind of knee-jerk reaction to the Barbie movie, because actually, and it was only really Michael Knowles, who's honestly one of my favorites of the Daily Wire, who really understood, hang on a second, there's a lot more to this film than the sort of, I don't know, it's kind of like, the reaction I got from Ben and Matt was kind of like boys with hurt feelings because the girls weren't respecting them or something. And it's like, yeah, no, there's way more to it than that. And you're being triggered by this at the beginning. John, I'm getting an echo for some reason. Right, okay, I haven't seen it. But anyway, so yeah, this was basically my response, which is a joke you don't get, actually.
I mean, I do, but I don't know the reference.
Exactly, yeah. Well, you don't get the joke.
I understand the Islamic bits, so that's fine. Still get it.
I mean, it literally was through jihad that Ken takes over Barbie's dream home.
Does he actually come back with a big beard and a sword, or
he doesn't?
Because I did see a bunch of Islamic versions of Barbie and Ken.
He doesn't have a beard, but in all of the ways, yeah.
Okay, so the Taliban return.
Yeah. Literally, Ken takes over Barbie Land like the Taliban. Yeah, that's actually. But the funniest bit is the Barbies love it. The Barbies are like, "Isn't this great?"
Okay.
And weird Barbie has to the sort of weird deformo feminist Barbie is just like, we need to brainwash them away from the patriarchy. So we've got to have feminist struggle sessions.
Who's weird feminist Barbie? Is that the main character, or is that
no? That's a side character. Obviously. Okay. The main character is stereotypical Barbie, who is Margot Robbie. Weird Barbie she was in Ghostbusters. This plays like
the female one.
Yeah, the female Ghostbusters.
That's all I need to hear. They're all the same.
Yeah, but she's like, but she wasn't bad as the character actually. But basically, she has to. They have to like kidnap the Barbies and brainwash them into feminism in order to get them to stop loving patriarchy, which is just great. I mean, honestly, that's just so great. I mean, and the thing is, Ken institutes patriarchy actually not using necessary force. He just goes in and explains the irresistible logic of patriarchy to them, and the Barbie's like, yeah, that sounds brilliant. He doesn't even force them into it. He just literally explains patriarchy, and they're like, oh, brilliant, can I have that? And they're like, isn't this great? It's just like, okay.
I mean, that is kind of the Zoomer experience.
I know.
But the boomers will come to you and be like, once upon a time, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, yeah, why can't we do that?
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. Let's have it. Yes. So let's get to some of the media reactions to Barbie, because I really enjoyed it. Does Barbie hate men, and is Ken an incel? Ken is definitely an incel. Because he actually doesn't have a penis. So he's obviously an incel, right? And moreover, Barbie doesn't like him. It's not that she doesn't like him. She's not like horrible to him, but she doesn't love him. She doesn't want a romantic relationship with Ken. Ken wants a romantic relationship with her. And so it's kind of sad and tragic, right?
I mean, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, this is why I'm kind of departing and leaving like Barbie's girls' toys is much of my reaction. But
yeah, that was my initial reaction too.
Is Ken meant to be a partner for Barbie in the originals, or is he meant to be a boyfriend?
Ken's
like a friend who's a boy.
No. Ken and Barbie are meant to have a romantic relationship.
From the dolls as well?
Yeah.
Or just the movie? Okay.
From the dolls, as I understand them. I might be wrong. I'm not an expert on Barbie, but that's what I have managed to gather, and that's the unwritten implication that underpins the Barbie-Ken relationship. And at the end, Barbie's like, look, I don't love you. So, you've got to find out who you are as just Ken. And he's just like, I'm literally made in relation to Barbie. Like, there is no just Ken. Why would there be a just Ken? But it's like, okay, let's explore that though. Why not just have a just Ken? What's just Ken like? He likes patriarchy and cars and horses. Okay, well, come on, let's talk about this, Anyway, we'll get to it.
But also, you don't just want MGTOW. I mean, MGTOW's
that's kind of what it is, yeah.
But that's not really the end goal, surely. I mean, as
No.
much as I appreciate the MGTOWs, I mean, everyone does admit that like, it would be nice to have a loving wife and family.
Yes, well, that's the point. The Barbie movie, Barbie Land, makes MGTOWs out of all the Kens, but that's not what Barbie chooses in the end. That's not what she wants. And so this is why all the feminists and a bunch of conservatives have failed to understand this film, right? Honestly, right? In parts, it is some of the most brutal takedown of feminism that I've ever seen. And I don't think I could have taken feminism down as brutally as the Barbie movie does. It's genuinely savage, right? Like I'm not going to spoil the hours long review and examination.
It's just interesting coming from you. It's like Anise Sarkeesian the past week was finally gone. And even you're sat there, misogynist in chief, being like,
the Barbie movie has destroyed feminism. What now? It's honestly, it's shocking. And none of the feminists seem to see it. And that's even more amusing, actually. But I've seen a lot of women. I spoke to a couple of women who have seen it, who said they kind of cried at the end when Barbie becomes a real woman. And so it's like, right, so the feminist gloss can be melted away by human emotion, is what they're saying, really. My wife watched the Barbie movie. She was like, it was all right. Barbie didn't learn anything at the end, though. It's like, okay, well, that's good. You know, my wife was just contemptuous of it. She was like, treats Ken terribly, and she didn't learn anything. It's like, yeah, that's true. Anyway, right. So let's talk about just some of the reactions, right? Because there's been a huge amount of, I was going to say ink spilt, but obviously not ink. But they say, they say, who's more of an incel than a dude with romantic feelings than just a smooth blob for a crotch? It's Ken. He thinks he's a 10, but Barbie doesn't want him. Ken is a 10, right? Like in Ryan Gosling's got legions of adoring female fans. Like, he's super famous, super wealthy, good looking and everything. Like, yeah, exactly. Incel. Exactly. If Barbie Land can even make Ryan Gosling into an incel, then the problem is Barbie Land, right? The problem isn't Ryan Gosling. The problem is the philosophy that props all of this up, right? But anyway, they say, look, Barbie doesn't hate men at all. It may actually be the perfect film for incels to watch if they had some sense of self-awareness. It's like, oh, my friend, you've literally pasted incel under Ryan Gosling, and you're like critiquing other people for not having self-awareness. Come on, right? Ken is an incel, but he grows out of it. He doesn't grow out of it. That's the thing. He grows into MGTOW, which is like, I suppose, a voluntary celibate then, but it's a blueprint for how angry men can transcend their lonely situation. But is it, though, right? So Barbie Land, they admit, is a colorful matriarchy, and the Barbies live alone, even though the Barbies have a corresponding Ken. They live alone because they're girl bosses, and the Kens seem to be regulated to a subservient underclass. This is the feminist future for you.
This does sound like feminist fantasy.
Yes.
That's what I assumed it was going to be.
Yes. And this is what Ben Shapiro reacted to, obviously. But you're missing the point, right? Because it's pretty evident that this is kind of the evil future that feminism wants for women. But isn't...
Hang on. I got a question, because I don't know.
Yeah.
So is the neighborhood like one of those American streets where it's the end of the street and then there's a big circle of houses?
Yeah.
So what's funny about that is, you remember we were talking about Don't Worry, Darling, which was a movie which was like the perfect life.
Yeah.
And it was also the women's perfect life, even though it was a whole dream thing, and I don't want to get into all that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was 1950s America. That's what they chose.
Yeah.
Just where the men buggered off and they had all the money in the world so they could go shopping.
Yeah, but I mean, these are Barbie dream houses.
No, but then you've got the feminist evil version of that.
Yeah. But it's that.
Where they live alone.
Yes.
The husband does not come home at 6 and make love to you. No, instead you're
on your own. And
have achievements.
And you work for corporations.
Right.
That's what I mean. And they're right. Look, they say in this, right? Barbie detractors look at this and believe it's supposed to be the idyllic paragon of society, according to the filmmakers, and the film is promoting matriarchy. That's clearly not the case, though, as the film proves that nobody in Barbie Land is suffering under the matriarchy. They are. The Kens are suffering.
The Barbies were as well.
Well, they are, because the reason that the film sort of actually kicks off into the proper story is that Barbie starts having intrusive thoughts of death. Like, that's not weird, is it? You're just walking, I'm going to die. Oh my God, does anyone else worry about dying? Everyone's like, what? It's like, look, there's something wrong with Barbie Land. And that's the point. The Kens are also suffering in the Barbie Land because the Kens live this wretched existence where they're just desperate for Barbie to look at them. And it's really sad, actually. It's deeply pathetic. And that's why I really don't like the literally me Ken thing. I mean, you are literally Ken, but like that's not good.
Why would you want to be the friend zone cuck?
Exactly. But unfortunately, it seems that a lot of essentially a generation of men, Gen Z men, are kind of actually in that position where being a man is a hindrance, which the film itself acknowledges. And this is a reflection of the real world. And it's because you were born as men. So I don't blame you for looking at patriarchy and being like, I'd rather that, please. You just need to persuade the women that that's the case. And actually, that's the Barbie movie kind of does. So anyway, they carry on and say, look, the Barbies are pretty happy, relieved that they don't have to work. Ken is obviously has a gaping hole in his plastic heart, even under patriarchy, and crumble when Barbie talks to him about it, which is more of a problem with the film. It's like, look, you actually can't be literally Ken because Ken can't uphold a patriarchy. Anyway, let's continue on. Right? Barbie is everything. Ken is everything else. Hero, villain, incel, warrior, leader, beach. Ken is not the star of Barbie, but he is its tragic plastic heart. You sure he's not the star of Barbie? Are we talking about Barbie? Are any of you talking about Barbie? No, you're all talking about Ken because actually it's Ken that has the interesting thing about him. Where do the Kens live? What cars do they drive? Barbie has no idea. They don't live in houses. They don't drive cars. They're literally this weird serf class, this oppressed underclass of homeless men.
Well, they're like migrant laborers who come back across the border at night.
Basically, yeah. But the Barbies just don't want around and don't have any use for. But anyway, they say except for one of them, the rest of them essentially just end up sniping and being cruel to each other, trying to compete for the Barbies' attention, except for Ryan Gosling's Ken, who they say, quote, chafes against his class status because he's literally part of an oppressed class, right? Ken is a reminder of the film, of the brute limits of Barbieland's utopia. Utopias are built on slaves. Utopias are for some people on the backs of other slaves, right? Ken bears the brunt of its errors. He's not merely Barbie's plaything. He's also the recipient of her casual cruelty. You can go now, Barbie tells him. I don't want you here, which she does say at one point. It's just like, oof, it's awful. You wouldn't ever say that to anyone, really. And yet it's totally normal, right? The film goes to great lengths to show you the oppressed class that is the Kens, right? Barbie, in her dismissals of Ken, doesn't mean to be mean. She treats him thoughtlessly because she has never had to consider that words might cause hurt. She has never needed to. It's like, oh, right. So privilege, equality feels like oppression if you're used to privilege, right? That's what they're saying here. Ken is, at the outset of the film, the most messily human feature of this plastic world. A tangle of need and hope and eventually rage. In the land of hard-set smiles, he winces. But Ken's not the hero. Right. I mean, he's literally the only interesting thing about the film, but he's not the hero, right?
Isn't this the classical hero story?
Yes. Yeah.
Already?
Yes. Ken literally is something out of the Iliad, actually. I've really enjoyed this film, but not for the reasons they thought, right? But what they say is that the bulk of the film finds Ken and Barbie on a journey that mimics adolescence. Having left the land of protection and play in easy dreams, they are plunged into the realities of the human world and the hard transactions of adulthood. The dolls must navigate a patriarchy, a place, the real world, which has no shortage of language for its political condition. Patriarchy, marginalization, objectification, oppression. Yeah, and if we apply those to Barbieland, it's the Kens who are the oppressed class. There is an ominous kind of justice in Ken's attempt to inject himself into the political life of Barbieland. Because, of course, in Barbieland, the women hold all the political office. Men hold zero on the basis that they're men, right? So they're not allowed any political power, any representation, anything like that. They're not even allowed houses or cars or even politeness, really. Right? And so they say it's a zero-sum solution for the problems of a zero-sum world. But why should they not? Of course, there's no injustice about the Kens rising up and overthrowing their oppressors and imposing on their oppressors the exact regime that the Barbies themselves fight for. Where's the injustice in that? From what position would the Barbies argue that they're being treated unjustly? They're doing to us what we want to do to them. Boo-hoo. Go Kens. What do you want? You know? Ken is finally getting the one thing he really wanted. Barbie is listening to him. He's telling her what it's like to be dimmed so that someone else might shine. And he adds the kicker, it doesn't feel good, does it? And Ken has to say this to Barbie at one point. And Barbie's just got nothing. She's got nothing to reply to that. She's like, well, yeah, I was being cruel to you this whole time. Forever. But Ken is a person who's denied the full dignity of his personhood. That, whatever your worldview, whatever your particular circumstance, whatever you're feeling about the word patriarchy, is a blatant form of injustice. So even the Atlantic has to be like, yeah, it is a matriarchal tyranny. It is terrible. And it's like, really, the Barbie movie portrayed that to the point where literally this is the sort of thing they write. I wept for Ken, write The Guardian. This is remarkable stuff. Like, how could you have gotten The Guardian to write, I weep for the oppressed men of the matriarchy? I
got nothing.
Exactly.
I mean, make a female-orientated movie and teach them that is literally the only idea, and I didn't come up with that. Obviously, it's there.
But it worked, right? It's literally got the Guardian being like, Barbie's the evil, oppressive villain of the Barbie movie.
Why doesn't she learn anything, though?
Because it's written by women.
Oh, okay. But you're not wrong.
I'm not wrong now, I know. I didn't expect to cry during Barbie, let alone to weep for Ken, the lonely man-child who's barely more significant than the ampersand that sits between him and his lover's name. Damn. That's... But then, she does fall back into her feminism. Unfortunately, a lot of men are being organized in the opposite direction. The rise of the manosphere, a network of misogynist communities with digital platforms like blogs, podcasts, and forums, is a real threat to the liberation of men from their plight.
What does she view the liberation of Ken as, then, if not the journey he went on?
She's not clear about it, if you can believe that.
So she realizes there's something's wrong and then just stops.
Yeah, she does.
The brainwashing kicks in.
Well, listen to this, right? She says, in the Barbie movie, all humans have become mere calculations for corporations, just as replaceable as the machine and tools we operate. And I think men feel that in their bones. That's not to say there aren't men who are having a blast under that's not to say there aren't people who aren't men having a blast under our real world system, as they're not, as demonstrated by record rates of depression among teenage girls. We live in the feminist system where everything is designed to push women into corporate occupations, to break them apart from families, to have them in the office working as much as they can, to present to them. I mean, things like Barbie, in fact, as in the product of the sexual revolution, as she says here, has caused record rates of depression amongst teenage girls.
There's a small minority of women who are doing very well out of this system, but who cares?
Yes, indeed.
None of their goals are actually even useful to anyone. So,
and the Guardian, the Barbie movie has forced the Guardian to admit this, which is fascinating to me. And so she's got to provide an alternative, right? So she's like, well, there are organizations like Black Men Build, which are providing clear paths for black men and others to engage in their own liberation. Okay, who wants to start White Men Build?
Is Ken going to be the front cover?
I don't think that's going to last very long. I think that might get cancelled. I think that might be called unacceptable patriarchal racism and oppression.
I don't know. I could kind of see one section of the Republican Party doing it.
Yes. But I
don't know how long it would last.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they do say that all of Western civilization could be called White Men Build. And they say that as if it's a bad thing.
Who, the Barbie movie or The Guardian?
The Guardian.
Huh.
But anyway, she says we need more of this. More men who are interested in not only transforming themselves, but transforming our entire society in something beautiful and gentle and worth living in. A Barbie land for us all. Barbie land? No, hang on. Barbie land was only something beautiful, gentle, and worth living in for everyone when it was turned into a patriarchy. Because in Barbie land...
Yes, but what about the feminist Barbie?
No, exactly.
She was left out of it.
No, she wasn't really.
Wasn't?
No, not really. She didn't really feature, but the only time that everyone is involved in Barbie Land is when the Kens have made it a patriarchy, and the Barbies are very happy with their Kens. Otherwise, the Barbies are on their own, and the Kens are just on the streets. So what she's asking for is a patriarchal version of Barbie Land, even though she doesn't realize it. Anyway, so unstoppable Kenergy, says The Guardian. How did Ryan Gosling steal the Barbie movie? Well, because Ryan Gosling was representing a character that actually speaks to an issue in the real world, whereas Barbie is speaking to the overclass of our civilizations. What can you do? It's not men's fault if they gave women everything they wanted and women set up a matriarchy that doesn't care about men. Not men's fault. Well, I mean, it is kind of our fault, but the pro-patriarchy character steals the Barbie movie. Come on, that's funny.
I'm surprised they didn't just ignore it.
I'm surprised. I'm genuinely surprised, right? And the thing is, you can see there's a kind of resentment that underpins the left with this. As it says, if you've seen Barbie, then you'll be fully aware that the star of the film is actually Ryan Gosling. Quality, love it. Let's move on. Can Ken win an Oscar? Who's going to get an Oscar for the Barbie movie?
Margot Robbie, I'm sorry, but...
Sorry, Margot.
The script...
It's going to be Ken.
The script didn't make you look out very good.
As the reviews of Barbie have flooded in, one obvious irony has stood out. The eternal supporting player is actually the star. No one has been getting greater notices for the film than Ryan Gosling. That's just grand, right? But they've got a quote from a film critic called Ellen E. Jones, who is a woman, obviously, and says that Gosling smashed it. However, and I love this, I don't fancy Ryan's chances much at the Oscars. Firstly, because even though we're in this era of awards show reform, supposedly in line with social changes in the world more generally, I believe the tedious self-seriousness which surrounds these ceremonies will be the last thing to go. And for that reason, a brilliantly hilarious performance like Gosling's will not be rewarded. She also makes the point that the optics of giving a man an award for what is so pointedly a feminist film are a bit off.
Brilliant would that be?
But isn't that just her response? Like, at one point, right, Ken's in the real world, and he walks up to a man and goes, you guys are doing patriarchy all wrong. I can't get a job even though I'm a man, right? And he's like, well, yeah, if anything, it's a bit of a drawback to be a man these days. And this guy replied, and it's like, what? This is exactly what she's saying. Literally, what?
If you can't give an award to Ken, you prove the point, you idiot.
Exactly, right? Exactly. So they can't help but admit, actually, yeah, it's not patriarchy there either. Yeah, it's, men are being held back because they're men, actually. We're for equality. We're feminists. But isn't that amazing, though? Just for her to literally admit, we can't give a man the award for Barbie. So why? Everyone's talking about him. He's the good thing about the film.
I did see the responses you were talking about that in the chat, just going, Margot the mid loses again.
Margot Robbie's not a mid.
No, but I love that meme.
Yeah, I know.
Because I like Internet Historian had a conversation with one of his exes once, where he just jokingly was like, oh, the Expo Center is way better than the Coliseum because you get more seats. And it's like, obviously you're taking the mick, like saying Margot Robbie's the mid.
Yeah.
But then people just start getting angry about you saying that, and it's like, well, now I've got to double down.
Well, yeah.
What is this?
Enough about Ken. Stop talking about Ken. Men are not always the center of women's thoughts, damn it.
Is this Black President Barbie here?
Well, you can see that it is.
Yeah.
That is the Barbie Senate.
Michelle Obama should have got it.
But I just love the enough about Ken. Like the angry articles, like, would you please stop talking about Ken? Ken is not the star of the Barbie movie. The Barbie movie is about women, damn it. Is that in a way it is, yeah. But in a way it's also about men. And the original title of this was Please Don't Make a Sequel About Ken. I would like a Ken sequel. I think that people on the internet should be agitating for a Ken sequel. I think a Ken sequel would be very good. But this article was literally written by Barbie, actually. This person...
Margot Robbie. This is writing under a pseudonym.
No, Margot Robbie doesn't seem to be evil, but this one...
No, she seems like a good person.
She does seem like a nice person. But this person doesn't seem to understand that actually Barbie was the villain of the Barbie film, and she's like, but I felt represented in Barbie. Right? She says, I know a lot of impressive women married to men. Maybe the men are impressive too. I don't give them much thought, to be honest. By the time I catch up with these women on what they're doing, commiserate the state of the world, we rarely have time to talk about their husbands. I mean, that's literally the Barbies in the Barbie film. That's the problem. When it comes to our closest friendships, many women I know are already living in Barbie world. It's the women who astound us, amaze us, and amuse us, and who get things done and make households run. The way we perceive it, their partners and husbands and the Kens supporting players in our friends' busy lives, navigating professional advancements, cross-country moves, and home renovations while caring for aging parents and mothering children in a collapsing world. Who's making it collapse? But literally, she's like, but I'm the Barbie. In the Barbie world, in the real world, and I don't care about the Kens, and it's falling apart. It's like, yeah, and there might be a patriarchal revolution on the horizon,
Picking up, like what she's describing, their husbands are picking up literally all the pieces.
Yes.
And you have the one job of trying to make things work, and it's collapsing.
Yes. Again, patriarchal revolution possibly on the horizon. I laughed a lot during Barbie, but I cried a lot too. At how hard it is to be a girl. Oh, yeah. How hard it is to be a woman. How long it might be until the world makes another mega budget movie about our lives and thoughts. I even got a little misty thinking about how confusing and challenging it must be to be a man right now. It's like, God, that is just the arrogance of the ruling class, isn't it?
Barbie, you described.
That is literally Barbie, isn't it? It's like, God, because I mean, Barbie is mildly sympathetic to Ken. She's
Start using the word Barbie as a slur for feminists who think like this.
Quite possibly. And we probably should.
Shut up, Barbie.
Yeah, no, that's possibly it, because literally it's like, oh, God, it must be so hard to be a peasant. Says the aristocrat. That's exactly how this comes across. But she's like, please, if there's a sequel, please don't make it about Ken. It's like, why? Why, you selfish, unbelievable, like, awful person. And so you obviously got the fan take, oh, men are just watching Barbie wrong. This is actually a very interesting article because it normalizes a bunch of dissident right-wing memes, which is weird. The Longhouse in particular is one that's come up very recently. And do
you want to describe the Longhouse?
Sure. The Longhouse is communal housing that, like, ancient Vikings or something were supposed to have lived in.
Indians.
Or whoever, the Indians or whoever. And this was ruled over by a den mother, a matriarch who is able to constantly pry and spy into everyone's personal business and maintain social control. And that's kind of the world we're living in now, actually. And so people are thinking, in fact, let the ruling Longhouse tremble at the Kenarchic revolution, writes one Twitter user. Kens of the world unite. Yeah. So
I live in the Longhouse. I want my own house.
Yes. Ken deserves his own house. And Barbie wants Ken to have his own house. The Barbies are so happy under the Ken revolution. Just saying.
All right. Suppose we'll wait for the Magnus Opus.
It's coming. Oh man, there is so much to it as well. Like the young girl in it who hates Barbie is the product of feminism, and she doesn't know that she's the product of feminism. Her mum doesn't know she's the product of feminism. Barbie can't seem to understand that the complaint about Barbie being a sexist capitalist icon, whatever it was, that's feminine. That's literally you're saying, I want to go back to being a traditional person.
You can tell the idiots who wrote that come from a left-wing angle.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you're making money off making women look good. That's all they got.
Exactly. And the thing is, it's like, okay, yeah, but you never had any of these problems prior to the 20th century. Why not? Why is that the case? Anyway, it's going to be, I'm going to have the best takes on this thing that anyone will.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as this interview with Philip Tanzer on a difficult conversation about sexuality and gender. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.